Hey.
Hey, oh my gosh, I have this stupid old background on. I said it once, I don't know how to friggin' like by default. Here we go. Not have it show up. There we
You
go.
so know that's going to get used.
Although you're recording on Skype already, that's a dirty journalist trick, Brady.
And that's all we have from Mark Robert today. Thanks for joining us.
Hey there everyone, here on Objectivity we love having objects associated with all the big names of science. We've had Isaac Newton, Charles Darwin, Albert Einstein, and today we have former NASA engineer, former Apple engineer, and now YouTube phenomenon, it's Mark Rober. Hello Mark.
Wow, I'm in great company with that intro. You really know how to do this.
What objects have you got? What are you going to show us today? What have you got there from your famous set?
So this is actually from Tim Urban from Wait But Why. Have you ever heard of this, Brady? The life calendar?
I think I have.
So what's really interesting about this is that every box on this represents 1 week. And then every row going down is a different year of your life. So there's 52 boxes across each row. And the bottom right corner is 90 years old. You know, I feel like, at least for me, and I'm a pretty like visual person, it's hard to really understand, especially like as you get older, life seems to go faster. This is a very graphical way to like map out your life thus far. The way I've done this is I've color coded it for different places that I've lived, because in my memories, you know, I kind of like almost catalog things that way. You know, so this is, you know, till I was 8 years old, I lived here in Torrance, and then I moved to Brea. Both those are in California. You know, and then this is like college. You know, I was in Japan for 2 years. Then I was in Southern California working at NASA, and then up here in the Bay Area working at Apple. But for me, it's really easy to then slot any memory to like a box on this. Now, this is why I'm showing it to you, and this is why it matters, is I've made some pretty big life decisions like based off this, right? So my first YouTube video ever is this dot right here. So my whole YouTube career is kind of just this chunk here, right? Everything up to that is prep. But what's really interesting, it's like, that's a pretty narrow slice of this whole page, right? So it's like, part of what's cool about this is it lets me see like, there's still so much more story that's unwritten. It's very visual, right? So to go with my example, if you're 31 years old and you're in a job that you really don't like, but the problem is you went to school for it, maybe you're a lawyer, you went to school for like 7 years for this thing, you've already been working in industry for 5 years and you hate it, but it's like the sunk cost thing where you're just like, I put so much into this, but why would I change careers to do this other thing that I'm a lot more passionate about? Maybe like fixing up old cars for people and making a business out of that. And it's like, that does seem crazy. As a 31-year-old, you spend all this money, maybe you've got some student loans, but if you could visually see, that's only here on this graph, and you have this much left, it's like, dude, even if it takes you 4 years to completely reset of just going back to school, doing whatever, like that's totally worth it, because you've got all this below.
Mark, it feels like a lot of the power of that chart for you is what's still to come, the squares that are not coloured in. But do you spend a lot of time looking at the ones that have already been coloured in? Do you reminisce? Do you feel sentimental about it?
Not really, to be honest. You're right. The power of this chart for me is much more this line and below. And realizing, you know, for me, you know, my career at NASA feels like a really long time. Or even like from 8 years old to 19, like my junior high, high school, grade school years are all represented by this. That feels like such a long time in my brain, but it really just helps me compare like, yeah, sure, that is a long time, but think about all that was accomplished in this time, or even all that was accomplished from when I did my first YouTube video to now. And it just really helps me think like, dude, in this next chunk, like, what am I gonna do? What are the next chapters gonna be? It can be just as impactful, you know?
When do you colour it in? Do you do it like, do you have a ritual at the end of each month, or do you forget for a few months? Or?
No, maybe every month and a half. I'm not gonna lie, these are fresh color marks knowing I was coming on here, Brady. Guilty as charged.
What are you going to do if you live past 90?
That's a good question. I guess I'll have to have like an addendum. Maybe I'll have to contact Tim. So you can get these at Wait But Why. And we'll both be old. We're about the same age. So maybe I'll make him make me like a 20-year addendum frame. You know, that's like this wide, and just put it right below that.
Great object. What are we going to have a look at next?
True Mark Rober fans will understand the significance of this sweater.
Oh, I know what that is.
Yeah, this is basically my first ever video on YouTube. And I wore this to a Halloween party. So you put an iPad in front, iPad in back. If you do a FaceTime video chat, the camera in front shows what's on the back and vice versa. So there's a conference call, basically, video call between the two. And then it looks like you have a hole in your body. So if you wave your hand in front, you see it from the back, basically. And so people thought it was cool at like our little Halloween party. So I was like, I should upload this to YouTube, this newfangled website YouTube I've heard people talking about. My ultimate goal was to be featured on Gizmodo, which is so hilarious now. It's like a technology website that's still around, and they featured it. So I was like, I've made it. I've hit the pinnacle. I've done it. It went super viral, you know, like front page of CNN, and it was like 1 million views in, you know, a handful of days. I was like, hey, look, A, this is a really cool feeling, and I have like lots of ideas, I feel like. Oh my gosh. And I've done basically a video a month since that moment, which was September 2011. So we're coming up on a decade here.
How do you feel when you go back and watch that video now? Do you look at it and cringe and think, oh, I could have done it so much technically better, or do you still feel like a warmth towards it?
I mean, it's like a love-hate relationship. What I love about it is it shows the kind of a growth mindset. And I love this with all YouTubers, by the way. You go back and watch their early videos, and unlike many other professions, you can actually see the growth occur. Even like how I raise my eyebrows right here and put my hands like this. And the volume I'm speaking at and the intonation, all of those were learned. And if you don't believe me, go watch that cringy video, because it's bad.
And if the party rat's kind of lame, then you can always do Angry Birds.
I feel like nowadays when people come out, they're already like a lot more polished because they've just seen so many examples and they're kind of like mimicking what's there, you know? But we were in the wild, wild west, Brady. I mean, it was wild.
That sweater, which is now part of your origin story, where do you keep it?
In like a bin. The reason this was hard for me to do is like I'm like you. It's like I don't really keep stuff. I have like one bin that's this big of like YouTube things, and so this sits in the bin there. But it's so fun to look at it because it was like, you know, I just went to Goodwill and found this sweater, cut it up. It was so like I had no idea the significance of like this moment when this moment was happening, which is like also a cool thing about life, right?
It's also a cool thing about objects. It's what I love about making these videos as well. Like this is like a tangible, solid thing that embodies that moment and the spirit of that whole concept.
Fair enough. You're not going to turn me into a hoarder, Brady. Don't try and like bring me over to the dark side of
Well, you kept that one, so there's
what
obviously something in the back of your head.
That's true. The high from that first video, going from absolutely nothing to that, I've sort of been chasing that high ever since, right? I've had videos that have gone much, much more viral, but like the delta from nothing to 2,000 subscribers in a day, I couldn't believe it. Just seeing like, what? These people, a gym full of people want to see what I make next, you know? And just seeing it go out, and friends and family. Now no one cares when I have something goes viral and like lots of people see it, but that time like, all these friends were like, dude, you've made it. I saw you on the thing, you know?
You went too hard too early. I remember a period where like 100 people watching a video was exciting.
That's true. I did peak early.
What's your finale?
Okay, the finale. So I have one kid. So it says, welcome home, daddy, or welcome back. I'd gone on a trip. What's interesting about my son, one of the interesting things, he's on the autism spectrum. And I've been really protective of my family. Like I don't really put my family in any videos, you know, my wife or son. I don't really talk about it. That will change real soon. On April 16th, I'm releasing a video on my channel that like basically tells all about my son and kind of makes a case for like a good way, the way I think about and my wife thinks about like folks with special needs and why they're important. This is kind of significant in the sense that we have a really cool relationship. So he's probably like 5 or 6 years behind, but what's really dope about that is he's a 14-year-old boy who makes me signs that say, "Welcome home, Daddy," you know? So like the coolest parts of childhood have sort of been stretched out. And we still have like a routine every night, like with the stuffed animals, and we've been doing that for probably 6 years, that he just loves and I love. We both look forward to it. But I asked him, I was like, what color is I? Right? So he's colored all of these like a bunch of different colors. And he's like, orange. I was like, that's wild, because he just made this like a one-off and gave it to me. And he couldn't see it. And I'm like, what color is X? And he's like, green, really fast. I was like, which letters are orange, and say them backwards? You know, just in his memory, he could see this, I guess, because he's like, PLIB. Like, he just rattles it off, right? And he can't see it. So it's fun to kind of get glimpses into his brain. Similarly, one day I asked him, I was like, say the alphabet backwards. And for most people, that's really hard, and we have to think about it. And he could literally, in the same way I'm reading this, you know, it's just like Z, Y, X, W, V. So, you know, he thinks in pictures. Some people have described it that way when you're on the autism spectrum. And so he could just really visualize a thing. And it's kind of fun to like get glimpses into that. Because he could communicate decently well, but like telling you about like how his brain works would be hard for him to like really, it's kind of abstract, you know? So we kind of like infer based off what he says. We kind of get to piece together how his brain works, which I think is why for autism the symbol is puzzle. You kind of puzzle together kind of how he works. You know, like, oh, did we go bowling with friends on? I was like, yeah, we did that. That was fun, huh? And this is like 3 years ago. He's like, yeah, that was October 16th, 2016. And I'm like, I pull out my calendar. I was like, oh, sure enough, there it is, bowling, So it's like, just randomly you get glimpses of like how his brain works, or he'll just start laughing at a random time because he's like reliving a memory in his brain and he can just visualize it so well. But he's, as you guys will see when I release the video, he's like the world does not deserve him. Like he's such a sweet kid. Just always thinking about other people. I always tell him that's like his superpower. And he'll say like, is that your favorite thing about me? I'm always thinking about other people. And I'm like, that's right. He's like, that's because I have autism. It's like, yeah.
As I understand it, he has a real love of using color and colors. And also he has this real skill with calendars and dates. He must love that calendar you showed us as your first object.
That's right. Actually, he does. I have another calendar too next to it that's like has the whole year but bigger boxes so I can write out when things are so I can just visualize it better as well. And he's constantly like referring to that. He'll see when I've added a new box. And so he's like, what's this, Daddy? And he also knows, it's funny, I kind of need to keep this on the down low, but he knows all of my videos through the end of the year, just because I've told him. So he's like, Daddy, is April this, and then May is this, and then June is this, and then I'm like, yeah, keep it on the DL, buddy.
He's a walking spoiler.
Spoiler.
Does he like it when Daddy brings a new video out?
Yeah, he does, especially the one that he's in or like his cousins are in. And like as he's getting older, right, so he's in high school now, and like, I have a decent following among like the high school age group, late junior high school. So he gets a lot of attention at school. And so he kind of wears it as a badge of honor and knows like, yeah, my daddy makes YouTube videos, He still calls me freaking daddy, which I can't, that's amazing as a 14-year-old, right? So, but everyone at school is so cool to him and nice to him. So it took him a long time to realize what I do. And I also didn't really even tell him, but to the extent that he understands what I do, I think he thinks it's pretty cool.
Look, well, Mark, thanks for your objects. They were 3 absolute crackers. I'd love to know more about all those screwdrivers and wrenches and things behind you, but I'm sure I wouldn't really understand, so maybe we'll do that another day.
It's a green screen. It's not even, it's a green screen.
I know it's real because I've stood there.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I do get accused of that sometimes because I do have like another workshop where I do like some of the bigger work. And so I don't know if people have noticed, but between one video and another, like maybe this is the only change on the whole thing. So it's like, that's a little suspicious, Mark.
That was great. Thanks so much for your time. I know you're one of the busiest guys in show business, so we appreciate it.
All right, Brady, sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
This actual 747 was originally owned by American Airlines, and it did transport people in transcontinental across the ocean flights until NASA procured it or bought it from American Airlines back in the 70s. NASA did need to transport some of the ground crew, people to secure the shuttles, secure the plane on both ends, both at Edwards Air Force Base and at the Kennedy Space Center.
Am I allowed to sit in one?
Sure.
I always like having a window seat, so I'm going to go for a window seat.